G'day everybody. Well, this is a substitute question and answer session. We didn't get to do one last Saturday, and we were actually in Dusseldorf Boat Show, which was all a bit of fun. Met some interesting people. Some people that we knew came to see us, and even an interesting one, maybe a possible Chinese entry for 2022. So stay tuned. That was a surprise. Anyway, it was kind of fun to be there, and we're pretty busy in the office. There's a lot going on, trying to keep up with everything that's happening on the race course and trying to get the story out, and also just the organisation for the finish. Hard to believe, but the first boats will be in very soon, as you well know, and it's going to be quite a big deal here in Les Sables-d'Olonne. So I'll tell you a bit about that in a minute. So we'll do a bit of an overview on the entrants now that are still sailing, and for fun, I'll do an overview of all the entrants that haven't made it in the water and still sailing right now, just to give you an update on what they're up to, and then some questions and answers. So at the moment, Tapio is he's running from another storm. He's heading up northeast, trying to get away from it, but this is a really weird one. The storm itself is circular. We've all seen them before, but it's moving across from it's coming up from the southwest, and then it sort of stops. It slows down a lot, and then in its circular motion it starts to build this wind gradient, and it comes up towards him. So it's really strange. The system itself's not moving away. It's just this sort of weather that's going to come and catch up with him, and it's quite severe, quite extreme. But the good news is he's at the top end of it, and the other good news is that the main wind strength, when it picks up from the northwest, goes to west, and then it quickly swings to the southwest. But that's before the strongest winds come. So when it swaps over to the southwest, it's probably only going to be blowing about 45, 50 maybe a bit more. But then once it establishes in the southwest, it's going to build and build and build. And I think he's probably going to get 70, 75 even, gusting. It's a bit hard to say at the moment. That'll all be happening over the next 24 hours. So we're thinking about him, and it's been very hard. His barnacles must be really big now. I can't imagine how big some of those clumps are. We saw them in Hobart. I reckon some of them now are probably about that long. Each one would be thicker than your finger, your thumb rather, and they're quite often in clumps. And when you get a clump like that, it's just a solid mass. But when the drag on the boat, these things sort of flopping around like that, that's worse than having just a fixed item, because it accentuates the drag. So I can't contemplate how that's going to play out. Even when it gets up into the Atlantic, doesn't want to swim, and it's slowing things down, keeping in the Southern Ocean longer. When this storm is over, there's another one coming in about 4 or 5 days time, and we'll monitor that as well. And he'll still be, even after all that, maybe still 1,000 miles from Cape Horn. So Tapio's having a bit of a fun time now, but he still loves it down there, and we do have faith in his boat and his ability as well, so no problem. Istvan, some of you may have seen the live video tracker this morning, and he's in a real hole in terms of the wind is doing all sorts of things. One minute he gets headwinds, and then there's a trough of no air at all going to come over the top of him and stop him, and so he's going to be sailing in circles, basically working hard, and I'm sure we'll hear about it. Uku's on a roll. He's finally made it to the trade winds, and he's going to enjoy the ride. He'll have probably 10 days of reasonable weather and sailing to get up over the equator and on his way north, which is kind of cool, because we want to see him up here as soon as we can. And he's dreaming of home. Then we get into the main game. Now, you really do need to see the tracker. The incredible part about this sort of closing stage of the race, besides the fact that both Mark and Jean-Luc are having a real ding-dong battle, is that the weather itself. A lot of really intense, heavy activity up in the North Atlantic, up high, and that's having an effect on the middle weather, which is where they are now. That high pressure system, and so it's changing every day. The predictions that I made yesterday are completely different than what I made this morning, and you can see when we look forward on the video, if you look back one, you can see how it's changing. Certainly the good news is the storms that we're projecting towards the finish when they're off the coast here have decreased and moved away, so that's not going to be a problem. But for those that didn't see the tracker, you want to have a look at it, and immediately I'd put it to you like this, that in Dusseldorf, when I was asked about what's the odds for Mark and Jean-Luc, I was saying Mark was looking in a commanding position and Jean-Luc was a little bit behind. I said Mark's probably 51%, Jean-Luc is probably about 49%. That's turned turtle now. There's no question that you can look at the weather system, and all things considered, if the forecast stays the same as they're projecting, and with Mark in his position and Jean-Luc where he is now, there's no question the balance is tipped heavily in favour of Jean-Luc, provided his mast stays up and all sorts of other issues. Mark's not out of the picture at all. Anything can happen between now and then. But the way it's going, basically Jean-Luc is in a better position because he's still making his way to the top end of the high pressure system, which gives him a favourable wind direction. And it looks as if he'll be able to keep just ahead of the centre of this high. The centre of the high, where there's no wind, is actually going to follow Jean-Luc. But I think his average speed should keep him just far enough ahead to not get stopped by ultralight winds over the next sort of 3 days, 2 or 3 days. And that's really important. Mark Slatz, on the other hand, he's currently got headwinds. We're fully expecting him any time now in the next few hours. He's likely to tack across and start heading north again. These winds are pushing him around, but he's going to be sailing away from the course soon. He's pretty well making due east right now, if you look at the tracker. But he's due to tack any moment, and when he does, he'll be heading pretty much north. But he's got the issue of the centre of this high, which is going to move away from him, give him a little bit better of a slant. But then it's going to extend, and I think generally you could say, whilst he's going to get some good winds to go up north and around the back of the high, he's going to be trapped by it. I think there's the potential there for Mark to luck out and not have room to move. You know, he's going to sail into some calm weather or not favourable weather. And what that'll mean is that in about 3 days' time, Jean-Luc could be, this is when they're both, that high, the centre of the high causing the confusion is gone, and they're in a common wind gradient, and they're on their way to the finish with consistent breezes, all from either reaching or running conditions, so very favourable. It's a boat race, and I think that'll happen in about 3 days, or 2 or 3 days time. And I think Jean-Luc will probably have a gap of anywhere between 250, 350 miles, and that's just simply going to be too much, maybe, for Mark to catch up. Now the issues there then come into play with Mark is obviously, I'd say he's a stronger sailor now, and he's got a faster boat if he drives it hard, and he'll put everything into this. He's got the tall rig, it's going to be reaching conditions, he doesn't have to worry about his mast, he'd be checking it all the time because he knows he's been pushing the boat really hard to go to windward for like weeks now. It seems like about a month. All that Mark has ever been doing is bang, 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 pushing hard and driving the boat. And now everything's at stake, so he's not going to let up. But his boat seems to be in good condition, so that's a plus for him. Jean-Luc, on the other hand, he's going to be, right now, he's pretty much on port tack, and that's going to continue. That's his weak side. That's going to continue all the way to the finish pretty well. And some of the breezes that he'll get could go, top 40, 45, even up to 50 by some of the forecasting there, and it's all on his weak side. Now he's put extra ropes up and he's doing all sorts of little things to make sure he's got a secure mast, but he's got to make sure he doesn't drop it. And then there's this whole thing we mentioned before, is at the end of the day, even if he did drop it, then he could probably still finish second with a jury rig because Uku's so far behind, and that may tip his balance a bit as well. It might be tempting to just go for broke. He'll be looking over his shoulder all the time, so it's not over yet. Watch this space. But if someone asked me, if you were saying to me what's the odds, I would say now, quite contrary to what I said on Sunday, that Jean-Luc is in a more favourable position than Mark. So watch this space. Anyway, hell of a race, and quite a bit of fun. So what's happening when they get here? This is the big thing. I know you're all interested in how the coverage will go. So we'll forget about who it might be. Whoever it is, they're going to be close together. There'll be another boat coming in, within a day or two of the first one. And they'll cross the line. It's straight off the river here. And they'll be met by any number of people. It's winter here in Les Sables d'Olonne, so a lot of boats have been closed up for winter, but we're still expecting a nice little fleet to go out and meet them. We'll have ribs out there as well, and security fleet and so on. And then Jean-Luc's wife and manager, Adil, will go on board his boat, and his manager, Lionel, will also go on board. And then we'll escort them down the river, the famous river. There'll probably be quite a few people cheering and waving, unless it's snowing or hailing or blowing too bad or whatever at 2 o'clock in the morning, but there'll be people there. And they'll come down the river, and we've got the Vendée Marina here. People will be on the marina. They'll be on the road, looking down on the marina. And Jean-Luc will pull up alongside the pontoon, and for about 20 minutes we've got these big crates of mum champagne here for Jean-Luc if it's him, and Mark if it's Mark, whatever. We've got 3 bottles, so Uku or Istvan will get another one. and they'll be alongside there for about 20 minutes or so, having the hoo-ha and so on. And then they'll come up. There's a great little race village being set up, different side to where the departure village was, but there's a huge stage, big screen, all the rest of it. So eventually they'll make their way up onto the stage, and there'll be some interesting chats with all the people there about Jean-Luc explaining some of the things about the race and the closing stages, if he's first, or Mark up there talking about his stages. If it's Mark first, it'll all be in English, right? We're not going to worry about doing Dutch, because I've been told by numerous people that the Dutch all learn English when they're at school, so so that'll be an English language thing. If it's Jean-Luc, or when Jean-Luc arrives on the stage, it'll be pretty much all French, okay, because it's the French local people here. It'll be on Facebook, and eventually that will also make it to YouTube, and you'll be able to do titles on that. And then from there it goes into a big press conference, okay? It's an international press conference, and Jean-Luc will be there. It'll have multi-camera coverage, live Facebook, and that'll be international. That'll be French and English, okay? So you'll get to see that. There may be some English interpretation for Jean-Luc when his chance is on stage and so on. We're still discussing that now, but we don't want to kill the moment, because it takes a long time to do the English and French translations, so we'll balance that. We've got a planning meeting tomorrow, but I don't want to give you the wrong impression right now. Certainly then the press conference will be a bit of it'll be fantastic, because there's huge interest in the finish. We've got a lot of international media coming across, and there'll be some great opportunities for questions and so on. So watch that space, and if you're coming over, we look forward to seeing you. The other thing, just while we're talking about stuff like that, the prize giving on April the 22nd, we can't announce what it'll be, but what I can say is that anyone that's here in Les Sables d'Olonne for the prize giving will be involved, okay? So there's going to be, I can't say what it's going to be and stuff like that, but if you are planning to be around, I think you'll enjoy the activity that's going to be based around the prize giving at the end. Then just waffling on a bit, once Jean-Luc is here and once Mark Slat's here, they have to stick around for a while, and we'll get a great chance to do some live Facebook stuff. So there'll be all the media things, and we'll do some quick lives with them during the course of their arrival. So when Mark's coming down the river, we'll be alongside in a rib and be asking him a few things and stuff like that. So you'll get a feel for what's going on. When Jean-Luc's coming down, same thing. The live Facebook we're doing will be joint English and French, okay? So all the interviews we've got coming down the river will be as you've seen us do before. So it doesn't matter where you are in the world, you'll really enjoy the arrival of Jean-Luc as a Frenchman, whether you speak English or French. And then when things settle down a bit more, because Jean-Luc lives here, of course, and Mark, I think we're not sure exactly what times, but he'll be around on plenty of occasions. He'll be here for when Uku comes in and stuff like that. We'll get him in the office here, and we'll sit down and we'll do two old bloke scenario. We'll get Mark and me, and we'll sit here and we'll just talk about the race. We'll natter on for half an hour. We might do a few of those sessions. So, and I'm sure that you'll see a lot of material when he gets back home, and bits and pieces. He'll be talking about this race forever. It's quite something. And the same with Jean-Luc. When Jean-Luc's here, we'll sit down and there'll be English versions and French versions of that. So you will get to see, an in-depth on what's going on. Get some interesting opinions from both of them, and we'll check out their boats, because once they get off the boat, 2 or 3 days later, there won't be any crowds around and stuff. We'll go down, hopefully talk with Mark. We'll get on board with Mark on the boat, and we can talk it through, all the different things, the things you've heard about, the mast issues, stuff like that, and it'll be fascinating. So keep an eye out for that stuff. Okay, just a quick one it's my cheat book, just to give you an overview of what's happening with people that actually did the race. I've got to have a list here because there were so many of them. Abelish Tommy, you probably know, he's announced that he really is keen to get back and do it again in 22, so that's cool. Antoine's boat's up for sale. I think it's all over. I think it's finished, but we're looking forward to seeing him. Hopefully he'll be here for when the guys finish, and he'll be at the prize giving as well. RA's up working on his plans for 2022, as you probably know, so he'll be back, and we look forward to seeing him at the prize giving. Ayrton's already entered 2022, and we'll catch up with him at the prize giving as well, so you'll see again about Ayrton. Francesco is selling his boat, okay, so I think that means it's the end of this adventure, and he'll move on to other things. Gregor's on the hunt for his boat. He's tied up with Cody, and they're hoping to get out there and actually salvage the boat. It's still afloat, the tracker's going, the AOS is working, all that stuff, so they'll get the boat and it'll all be happening. Igor, as you've seen, he's not coming back until November to start his voyage again. We don't know the nature of his medical issues, that's private and confidential, obviously. He looked incredibly disappointed in that video that he had, so I think you've all probably seen that, and we wish him well. We're looking forward to hearing about Igor's further adventures and following when he sets off again. He's also declared publicly he's going to enter 2022. Istvan, he's out there doing it, all about that. Same with Jean-Luc. Kevin Fairbrother, he's up in the mountains again. He's heading up onto Everest again and a lot of the other high mountain peaks and so on. So he's definitely settled into the mountain routine. Loic, back, happy with the family, having fun. I haven't actually seen him or spoken to him since he's been back, but I know he said he's coming around, and I think he'll probably be here for when Mark and Jean-Luc turn up. Mark Sinclair, I'm sure he'll be over for the prize giving. He's over in Adelaide having fun with his boat with the family, so watch this space. He's intimated previously on some occasions that it's not all over yet. He's got some other plans, maybe 22, maybe whatever, I'm not sure. Mark's out there, and Nabil, we just got a bit of intel the other day that Nabil, we hadn't heard boo from Nabil. We didn't know what happened to his boat or where it was going, but it was left on the marina. He got off within 24 hours when he got there and went back to America. But now he's in the middle of the Atlantic heading back to America with his boat. So whether he's going to keep it, whether he's going to sell it, who knows what, but he'll be enjoying the sail, that's for sure. Philippe Peche, his boat's up for sale. I think that's it. He's sort of declared that he's retired from long distance ocean racing now, so that's cool. Susie, well, we all know Susie's story. It's amazing. In fact, all three the ones that have had the traumatic experience of being sort of rolled and dismasted and all that stuff, it really hits them hard. I've got to say that. I think everyone knows that, and Susie's no different. So she'll be ready to re-engage with everyone when she's up for it. Tapio having a ball in the Southern Ocean, and Uku's the same. So bit of a brief overview of what's going on. The other one, watch this space. We're going to have gold collector GGR official coins. I just put a post up on Facebook, so we'll announce all the details of that next week. So quickly into not many questions. There's only about 7 questions or something, so we're nearly done, and I'll keep it pretty simple. But Simon Hawkins was wondering about the weather reports. Obviously, with the ham radio guys, there's pretty comprehensive weather reports that they've been able to use. But he was wondering about with single sideband stations, what sort of reports can they get? How come most people have gone to ham? Well, with the Marine HF single sideband radio, you've got a few options. One of them is to use the national networks, like the national broadcasting stations that put out all of the IMO, that's the official government weather forecast. It's a written forecast. It's part of the GMDSS Global Distress Management System. All the ships can get it. It comes as a voice one. If you want to get on, it comes as a text. If you've got nav text, and you can just do that any frequency you like. There are also various private networks. These are maritime networks, and they're like cruising nets. So if you've got a cruising boat out there, you could get onto the Atlantic Cruises net, you can get on a Caribbean one, there's some in the Pacific and different spots, and you can actually get reasonable forecasts from there as well. You could also have a radphone call on your HF radio if you set it up before you go, and you could ring home and you could get a forecast from anyone to talk about what's going on. So there is a difference, but with ham radio, obviously there's the official forecast they give, and then they can sit there at the moment for this and look at windy TY, predict wind, all those good things, and talk about it. As long as they're not routing, then it's okay. So that's okay, and we'll be looking quite a bit at what's going on with ham radios here in this edition in relation to 2022, and it's even possible we may ban ham radios next edition. Who knows? Because everything can be done on Marine HF, and there were no ham radios used in 1968 either. So Mike Phillips was asking about two things. How's the salvage operation going with Gregor's boat? Well, Cody at the moment is in Perth sorting out boats and plans. Gregor sent some gear over to Cody and so on. I think we'd expect to see something happening on the water within the next few weeks. They have launched a crowdfunding campaign. Cody's funding it, but any help he can get helps the whole deal. And they've got a few ideas on how to pay back with some of that grog as well. So that's all happening. Then Mike was asking, can I convince Igor and Mark Sinclair to have a race, get back in and sail back? I don't think we'll see Mark Sinclair jump in the boat and sail back to Les Sables straight away. and who knows what, but if they do, then it might be a race. You never know. And we'll wait for Igor. Simon Hawkins wanted to know the difference between ham radio and marine single sideband, and it's an interesting point because I'm from Australia. I started sailing down there. All of my sailing in yachts since I was 16 was all done with HF radios, and in fact in the beginning they were analog. They didn't even have single sideband. It was your old AM type deal. And in Europe you don't use HF radios or single sideband. It's all VHF. So basically, the radios themselves, the difference is very minor. This is a ham radio, okay? It's just looks like a normal radio receiver. You've got a dial there to change the frequency. You've got volumes, and you've got different modes, okay? You've got single sideband, you've got AM, you've got different ways of transmitting, okay? Upper sideband, lower sideband, and so on. You have your radio, you have an antenna tuning unit, and then you have a long wire antenna, which is often your backstay, and so on. And a marine one, the only difference between the two really is the frequencies that you're allowed to transmit on. Now the frequency is the wave length, you might say. It varies, okay? And you can have 2 megs, 4 megs, 6 megs, 8 megs. You can go right up to sort of 16, 22, whatever megahertz. And the bigger the frequency, potentially the further your signal is going to go, depending on whether it's day or night. It starts to get a bit complicated. But if you take any given frequency, say if you take the 14 meg, or say the 8 megahertz bands in marine side, it's all the numbers on the dial, like your FM radio. You have the numbers on the dial, and certain segments of that frequency are allocated to different types of radios. And in a marine radio, you get like this frequency, that bit there, but the bit in the middle you can't get to. So they're the only frequencies, those ones there, that you can get on a marine HF radio. They're not built in to have any of the other frequencies, and you might have marine frequency there and there, but the other bits might be aviation and only aircraft can use them, or you might have ham radio, amateur radio, that you can use these parts of the frequencies. And the ham radio can't necessarily transmit on the marine frequencies. So there is a difference in the bands and the frequencies that you can use depending on whether you're aviation, whether you're marine, whether you're amateur band, and even if you're a land-based terrestrial. So that's one of the big differences, the frequencies you can transmit on. The licensing requirements are a little bit different depending on which type of frequency you're after. I've got an aviation radio license, and it's pretty simple. You've got to know the phonetic alphabet. That's like Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Foxtrot. You can spell out names by a sound if the reception, the transmission is weak. So you've got to have your phonetic alphabet. You've got to know the principles of radio traffic, and you've got to understand how the frequencies work, and a little bit on radio. So it's very simple. You can learn it in a matter of hours and then pass your test. For the marine side, it's pretty similar. You've got to know a little bit about legislation and how the radio works, phonetic alphabet again, and you get it. With amateur radio, it's a bit more complicated because the radios, someone uses that radio wrong, they can jam other frequencies, and they want to know that the amateur operators are very strict with their rules, and it can be used at times of civil defence or national disaster when other stuff fails, your phone network fails. So they want to know that people are pretty good at it. So it takes a lot longer. You learn about electronics. You used to have to do Morse code, did it, da, 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 did it, did. But in Australia now, for instance, you don't have to do that. You can just do all your electronics, and it's a bit more sophisticated. So it might take you a week or so to actually sit and learn or a couple of weeks to learn your amateur band, then you get your license. So that's really about it. They are two different types of radios, and a little bit more sophisticated. The ham is probably the most sophisticated license to get, and you've got to comprehend a lot more stuff in there. So, okay. Marion Shirley wanted to know what's the arrival time for Uku and Istvan. They're going to be about 1 month, a little bit over a month behind the first two boats. So you could look at that and you could say 4 or 5 weeks later, that's when Uku's going to turn up, and then Istvan, who knows whether he can keep up with, if Istvan can keep up with Uku or not. So we'll have to wait and see. A question here from Robert Reynolds about running backstays on rustlers. So everyone knows this rustler. That's Susie's rustler. If there's an inner forestay here to hold the staysail, which there usually is, okay, sometimes the boats, there's two ways to support the mast. You can have another wire coming up the back here which holds it, but often you'll put a a running backstay, which is a flexible one, has a block and tackle at the bottom here, and you can tighten it or loosen it. When you loosen it, you undo it and move it forward so that the mainsail can swing across. And he was saying that he didn't think Russ's usually had a running backstay. Why would they put it on and all the rest of it? Well, the reality is that any extra rigging that you put on the mast that's running, which means you can take it off or put it on, is good in the Southern Ocean. So even if you didn't think you needed it, you'd put one on anyway. And if you've got a big storm coming, you can strap it down, and if it's a reefed mainsail, the boom will still pass the running backstay. So you can have extra, removable forestays, all sorts of things. So it's all about making the rig stronger. So those boats in the GGR that have got running backstays, that's what that's all about. Okay, Apo Verta was wondering about, am I surprised about the passion of the types of comments that we get in relation to some of the decisions that have been made in the past few weeks, as in people getting hot under the collar and sort of blah, blah, going on. I'm not surprised about it at all, because everyone's very passionate about their favourites in the race, and and it's incredible. The whole idea of the GGR is to inspire people to get out there and do things, and inspiration is often driven by passion, and you get your own attitudes and your own opinions, and so that can be a good thing. There's been an interesting statistic. I've never talked about this before, so I'm just thinking of it now. I think out of all the followers that we have, we've only ever blocked 5 people. Okay, so out of the thousands and thousands of people, we've had some really nasty comments, not about me, but about some of them quite horrible comments, and we ended up blocking only 5 people. And I've got to say, when we went into the GGR, we discussed this about social media and said, we've got to be on top of it and really monitor it, and we're going to have to, filter things and this and that. We've done virtually no, by comparison, virtually no censorship. We've let it roll. We've blocked 5 people, and I think we've deleted probably about 10 posts in total for the entire GGR. So what that tells me is that the people that are commenting and all that stuff are pretty sensible. They understand what it's about. We like healthy opinion. I'm not, my opinions don't necessarily have to agree with everyone else, but I just have my opinions, and that's a good thing. And we respect other people's opinions too. Someone can have a complete contrary opinion to what GGR philosophy is or whatever, and that's great. Like the world's full of colour and full of people and different ideas, different opinions. So no, I'm not surprised about the passion. That's one of the beauties about the GGR. It's got a very unique demographic of followers. That we all love, as I say, the technology and everything is really high and extreme, and I love the Ultims. They're just insane. They're crazy, and the Vendée Globe is like peak Atlas stuff. It's like, whoa. So all that stuff's fantastic, but we're just different. We've got our place in the world, and I like it. It's kind of cool, and I know a lot of you do. So, and on that, I'm still getting great emails. Thanks for everyone that's sending us emails about what's going on here. It's fantastic. One last question. Two last questions. Gary Smith, do I think that the storm activity that we've experienced during the race is extraordinary or worse than normal and all the rest of it? Really hard to say. What I will say is the world weather is changing. I mean, it's pretty darn obvious, climate change, call it what you like, it's changing. Possibly so. But it's hard to predict because we don't watch every little bit all the time. Brendan Porrell was asking about the barnacle issues on Tapio's boat, for instance, in the storm. Would it be a good thing or a bad thing? And he thinks it's possibly causing some drag. It's like running a constant drogue or warps down the back. Yeah, that's exactly right. It's slowing the boat down. But one of the issues in the Southern Ocean is to get out of there. I mean, it's really great to enjoy it, and I've got to tell you, I love the Southern Ocean as well. I spent 3.5 years of my life down there, sailing around on different things, and it's fantastic. But in this sort of situation, the quicker you get out of there, the safer it can be. So you don't want to sit there too long. I think that's really about it. I've covered most of the stuff, so we're going to play it by ear. But just to give you once again, for those that are still left watching this, the coverage we've got, it'll be every day now, right through until the last boat's in from this session, Mark or Jean-Luc, is that on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, it'll be a French live tracker, okay, in French language. Christophe will do that. I'll do the alternate days, and Saturday and Sunday in English. And when there is a French live tracker day, you'll get an real English Facebook post, written post that'll auto-translate to French. And when we do the English tracker days, it'll be a French language written post. And we'll keep throwing in all the bits and pieces, and we'll do some other commentaries on the way through. So a lot happening as they come in, and there'll be even more fun in the month after they get back. There'll be some fun things. Okay, that's it. Thank you. See you later. Bye-bye.